Back in 2018, back when the United States Navy was wondering what on earth they should do with their awkward stepchildren, the Zumwalt-class destroyers, US Air Force General John Hyten, head of United States Strategic Command, suggested the Zumwalt DDGs be armed with nuclear-tipped cruise missiles. Anyway, named after Admiral Zumwalt, a veteran of World War II and the Vietnam Wars, the Zumwalt-class destroyers of the United States Navy are well known across the globe for both their unique looks and large size. Displacing more than 15,000 tons and over 600 feet in length, they are bigger than the US Navy's Ticonderoga and the Russian Slava-class cruisers. During the 1990s, the Navy wanted a fleet going into the 21st century that would bristle with the latest technology, taking advantage of the so-called digital revolution. Newer, smaller and faster processors enabled more accurate and longer-range weapons, sensors and improved intelligence gathering techniques. Real-time communication via the internet promised enhanced situational awareness, reducing the turmoil and encompassing the fog of war. This sense of hopefulness led to a transformation in military thinking that was seized upon by the US Navy and other branches of the American military, such as the USAF with its F-35 fighter, aggressively implementing what was considered as a state-of-the-art and 21st century thinking agenda. Plans for a host of new ship classes emerged during this period: the Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine, enhanced variants of the Arleigh Burke destroyer, the Littoral Combat Ship or LCS, the Ford-class aircraft carrier, and of course the Zumwalt-class destroyer. The Zumwalt class grew out of the US Navy's 21st Century Surface Combatant or SC-21 program, initiated by Navy planners in the early 1990s. The Navy initially conceived of the ship as the most technologically advanced ever to be built, one that would replace several classes of ship, including destroyers and guided missile cruisers. Designed from the outset to operate in the littoral environment, that is, inshore operations, supporting troops on the land with long-range, accurate fires. At the same time, SC-21 ships had to function equally well in the open ocean. Since then, the Navy has shifted the ship's mission to one focusing on warfare, or that is, surface warfare, at sea. However, the Bush administration cancelled SC-21 in November of 2001. After the end of the Bush administration, the Navy under the Obama administration was no longer as concerned with the Middle East. Instead, it began to focus or refocus on its strategic competitors such as Russia and, more significantly, the People's Republic of China, and with the PRC's rapidly expanding surface and submarine fleets, along with the threat posed by anti-ship ballistic and cruise missiles. The hull of the Zumwalt class is similar to that of the DD-21, but the new design displaces 14,564 tons, unlike the DD-21, which would have displaced 16,000 tons, and the deckhouse is flush to the sides of the hull with the Zumwalts. The unique looks are an attempt to reduce but not eliminate the ship's visibility to radar. The design of the three ships that make up the Zumwalt class, that is USS Monsoor, USS Zumwalt and USS Lyndon B. Johnson, led to claims that the ships look no bigger than a fishing boat on radar. Now, whether this is entirely accurate or not is up for debate, as the United States Navy are not showing their cards. Of course, such a return, if true, is likely just what the US military wants. If we look at the shape of these $4 billion ships, we notice there are less visible edges and external decks on the ship's superstructure and upper surfaces. Rather, the ship appears slab-sided with flat panels that are slightly angled inwards. This is so for both the hull and the superstructure of these ships. Compared with other surface ships, its configuration is altogether different. There are fewer edges and less protruding architecture, rather than a conventional warship with its multiple tall and angled masts and distinctive structures supporting a massive radars, antennas and obvious weapon systems. The Zumwalt's exterior exhibits only a few discernible edges to achieve its unique design. Contrasting shapes and sharp angles offer more areas of which radar pings can bounce, all features of traditional warship construction. Stealthy designs, on the other hand, occur when radar receives less returning electromagnetic pings with which to identify a particular object. Enough return signals arranged in a certain way allows radars to assess the range, position, shape, and size of a particular object. This design also allows manning with a standard crew size of 158 personnel, thereby decreasing life cycle operations and support costs. The distinctive tumble-home hull is more narrowly built than existing destroyers, making it harder for enemy sonar to identify. The active pings from a sonar set operate in a similar way to radar, using sound rather than electrical or radio signals. Knowing this, the designers of the Zumwalt class of ships sought to build a ship less detectable to both radar and sonar systems. The ships have hangar facilities for a medium-sized helicopter, such as the SH-60 helicopter and UAVs. The large size of the ships means they have a lot of growth potential for the installation of new technology and systems during their lifespan, reminiscent of the excellent Spruance-class destroyers built during the Cold War and, in my opinion, removed from service far too early. We should remember here that when the US Navy first placed the Spruance-class DDGs into service, they were often criticised as underarmed. The Zumwalts too have received heavy criticism for their much maligned weapon systems, costs, and small fleet size. To be sure, many of these criticisms may be warranted. However, like so many other large ships, time will likely find a role and useful purpose for the Zumwalts. The Zumwalt's advanced gun system faced a plague of issues, including not meeting the range promised and cost overruns. Rather than firing a shell 70 miles, it could lob them no further than around 50. An impressive feat to be sure, however not the range promised. However, to be fair, if a ship is in danger within 50 miles of a coastline, it will likely face the same threats at 70. Still, its rocket-boosted LRLAP, and that stands for Long Range Laser Assisted Projectile, GPS-guided shells cost between $800,000 to $1 million each, nearly as expensive as longer-range cruise missiles with a larger warhead. The Navy budgeted for 150 of the 7-foot-long, 225-pound shells for $476,946 each in 2015. Critics point out the Zumwalt's evolved Sea Sparrow air defense missiles have a range of only 30 miles, adequate only for local air defense coverage. While this is true, we must remember these ships have the room to incorporate new and additional weapons if needed. The term fitted for but not with is not new in military circles around the globe. Basically, it means a weapon system has room for growth if required. Over the past few years, a host of recommendations have come to the fore about how best to utilize these ships. Proposed ship updates would allow them to fire Tomahawk Block 4 and later the Block 5 cruise missiles. The Tomahawk data link allows it to change targets while on flight or loiter for hours and change course on command. Another update could include Raytheon's SM-6 or RIM-174, a multi-role missile capable of anti-air warfare, ballistic missile defense, and anti-ship strike roles. The SM-6 can provide longer-range air defense up to 150 miles and may reach an altitude in excess of 110,000 feet or 34,000 meters. Compared with the Tomahawk, the SM-6 has a much smaller 140-pound warhead, but its maximum speed of Mach 3.5 makes it much harder to intercept. Eventually, improved or less costly shells may be developed for the main guns, or perhaps they may be replaced with missile launch cells or even future weapons such as lasers or railguns. Although to be sure, the US Navy's railgun program has not met expectations so far. The destroyer's radar cross-section has been degraded to cut costs with the adoption of a cheaper steel deckhouse than the originally proposed composite superstructure for DDG-1002 Lyndon B. Johnson and the incorporation of non-flush sensor and communications masts. Proponents are suggesting the ships take on more of an anti-surface ship role with the addition of hypersonic missiles, a suggestion the Navy took up in December 2017 when the Navy decided the class would focus on anti-ship warfare. The Navy would like to fit the ships with hypersonic missiles by 2025, according to USNI News. The Navy's Commander of Operations, Admiral Mike Gilday, told Breaking Defense in February 2021 that the Zumwalt-class ships would be the first to test out the hypersonic technology. This mission could allow the stealthy Zumwalts to steam far ahead of the fleet and penetrate areas protected by long-range anti-ship missiles. It could slink closer to enemy warships before launching its own missiles, reducing the response time of an enemy. We should remember that ships often will be refitted for different roles over the course of their lifetimes, although doing so to a brand new ship is a little less common. Refitting them as dedicated ship hunters may mean exchanging some anti-aircraft and anti-submarine capabilities to make them more effective in the anti-surface role. This may introduce a new set of concerns, such as sending a ship into a hostile environment without adequate protection against air or subsurface threats. This may be a bad idea. As previously mentioned, in 2018, the leader of US Strategic Command, General John Hyten, posited that the destroyers could be refitted with nuclear cruise missiles. The possibility of arming the Zumwalts with new nuclear-armed cruise missiles will be a logical extension of the US Navy's previously announced desire to have those ships focus on standoff attacks against enemy targets and shore targets. Nuclear-armed surface ships are not a new idea. During the Cold War, US surface combatants frequently carried nuclear weapons, although the US position at the time was a strict neither confirm nor deny policy as to which ships were carrying nuclear weapons. The Zumwalt destroyers could conceivably leverage their low observable characteristics to be able to better position themselves even in high threat environments. Despite their high cost, the Zumwalts have been plagued by equipment problems. Not long after commissioning in 2016, the USS Zumwalt experienced mechanical problems while in the Panama Canal. The USS Michael Monsoor encountered problems during sea trials the following year, although we should remember that one of the reasons a ship undergoes sea trials is to find out if there are problems that must be resolved. A 2018 report from Military Watch magazine noted the Zumwalts failed to meet a number of specifications, including weapons not meeting expectations, stalling engines, and stealth capabilities not performing to standard. They have almost entirely failed to fulfill the original intended role of multi-purpose destroyer, while the scale of cost overruns alone brings the viability of the program into question. Even if the destroyers were able to function as intended, the outlet said. The unique tumble-home design of the hull has detractors saying the ship is less stable in heavy seas, although, according to the commanding officer of the USS Zumwalt, Captain Andrew Carlson, the ship has a remarkable, if even somewhat surprising, stability. The captain went on to say, and I quote, "We took advantage of a Gulf of Alaska storm which reached Sea State 6 conditions. Sea State 6, I believe that's waves up to around 20 feet. And he went on, we were able to drive around in that at full power. I had some hesitations and I knew the ship rode differently, but I would rather ride this ship in heavy seas," Carlson said during a presentation at the Navy Surface Association Symposium in Arlington. While the ships continue to endure significant criticisms with complaints over cost, weapon systems, and what its role within the US Navy should be, only a fool would underestimate the ships in a future conflict. From its very beginning, the United States Navy has proven itself adept at using imagination and flexibility to bring out the very best in its ships and the sailors who fight them. The benefits of these two traits are historically underestimated by America's foes. These ships have a speed in excess of 30 knots, powered by an integrated power system made up of Rolls-Royce MT-30 gas turbines and Rolls-Royce RR4500 turbine generators, according to AeroWeb. The Zumwalt class produces about 78 megawatts of power, similar to the energy generated by a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, according to the US Indo-Pacific Command. It remains to be seen if the US Navy has the initiative to harness the unique attributes of the Zumwalt class of ships. Many experts claim these ships are the result of a lack of strategic consensus on the role of the Navy. This lack of focus resulted in a disconnect between a clearly defined maritime strategy and naval procurement. The Navy oriented to strike operations, including direct support of ground forces, failed to explore whether cheaper, unmanned systems could perform the same missions for less money. The Zumwalt class has proven to be an ambitious attempt to prove the idea that a large surface ship with inherent stealth attributes is plausible through confusing and lessening the effectiveness of enemy sensors and weapon systems, thereby making the ship more survivable in a future conflict.